I'm Melanie, and you're watching Yarn Journeys. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. And if you are new to my channel, I am so glad you found it. Today we are going to Iceland, land of fire and ice, big woolly sweaters, icebergs, volcanoes, and more sheep than there are people. Last September of 2021, my husband and I rented a trusty camper van and spent 2 weeks driving around Iceland's famous ring road. We went in the clockwise direction, starting in Reykjavik, heading through the west up into the north, and then back around to the east and then to the south. It was a fun trip, full of adventure, which I will be sure to share with you. So today we're going to dive into the world of Icelandic wool and knitting. I'm going to introduce to you some of the woolly hotspots that I discovered and show you the items that I knit from the wool that I got there. Then, of course, I'll be showing you some amazing scenery from our trip. I mean, wow. I mean, Iceland is just gobsmacking in the visual smorgasbord of mountains and cliffs and volcanic rock formations and icebergs. It goes on and on. It's really quite fabulous. And then finally, I will do my regular show and tell with my current works in progress and finished objects. According to the Fleece and Fiber sourcebook, my main resource for researching all things related to sheep breeds and wool, the Icelandic sheep breed is an ancient one. It dates back to around the year 1000 and before, when the Vikings were settling Iceland and bringing their sheep with them. The breed is really quite hardy. It is double coated and very well suited to the harsh, cold and wintry environment that Iceland has for most of the year. The outer coat is strong and has, is thicker fiber and helps shield the sheep from the elements, and the inner coat is lofty and fine and is more the insulation for the animal. Commercially prepared Icelandic wool actually combines both the outer coat and the inner coat, so that when you get an Icelandic sweater, it is both very sturdy and very warm. The company Istex, which is the main manufacturer of Icelandic yarn, generally has 2 kinds of wool that they produce. And you can find it in the supermarkets and in the gas station convenience stores, and it is all over Iceland and quite cheap. But you can most frequently find what's the famous plied Aran weight yarn called Letlopi, as well as the unspun plateau lopi, and I'm going to be talking a lot about that. The unspun plateau lopi comes in what looks like a plate, and it's quite fragile. I mean, it's easy to put together. It just, it's like unspun wool. You can just easily tear it apart, but because of the characteristics, it also goes back. You can just rub it in your hands and then you can knit with it again. It's really quite interesting. I thought it was going to be hard to knit with, but it really isn't. So Icelandic knitting is, of course, most famous for the Lopa Pesa, which is that iconic pattern yoke, top-down knit, heavyweight sweater, and you'll see people all over Iceland wearing them. And if you as a tourist wants to buy them, they're very easy to find. I will say that there are differences in quality. So if you're heading to Iceland to get a real deal Lopa Pesa, I recommend looking into the Hand Knitters Association of Iceland. There's 2 shops in Reykjavik, and there's a couple of other stores I'll mention where they have Icelandic wool knit sweaters knit by Icelanders. They are more expensive. They often, an adult male's Icelandic sweater can be as much as $400. But it is the real deal. In most of the tourist shops, as I came to understand, what they're doing is they're taking the wool manufactured in Iceland, sending it to countries like China, where hand knitters will knit the sweaters, and then they're shipped back to Iceland for sale in the tourist shops. They are quite a bit cheaper than the ones made by hand knitters in Iceland. And frankly, the hand knitters in Iceland probably couldn't keep up with the demand for the Lopa Pesas. It's just something to keep in mind. You'll be able to tell the difference because the ones hand knit in Iceland will actually say hand knit in Iceland in the label in the sweater, whereas the ones that are hand knit outside of Iceland will just say made of Icelandic wool, designed in Iceland. Something to note if you decide to go to Iceland. I, of course, before I even went, knew that I wanted to knit my own Lopa Pesa or Icelandic sweater. And so I was on the hunt for wool to knit my sweater with. Selfoss, a town southeast of Reykjavik, had a nice collection of woolly hotspots. The first one I'm going to tell you about is called, and I'm going to check my notes because I know I'm not going to say it right. It's the Headband yarn shop. So this yarn shop actually caters to Icelandic knitters who want to knit with all kinds of wool. And in fact, many of the yarn brands I saw there were not Icelandic, but ones that are common in the United States and probably all over the world, like Malabrigo. I saw a number of brands that had superwash merino wool and wool brands from the UK and so forth. So this really wasn't a tourist shop. It was a genuine yarn shop that wanted to serve knitters who were interested in making all sorts of things. That said, they also had a really great selection of colors in the Istex brands. So you could see Istex, Let Lopi, and Plotto Lopi all over the country, but oftentimes the color choices were limited. However, here at the Headband yarn shop, they had almost all the colors that I had seen before on the Istex website. Before I'd gotten on the plane to Iceland, I picked out a couple patterns that I thought I wanted to knit. And one of them was the Utivist sweater by Helene Magnusson. And it's a hiking sweater. So it's got a zipper, and well, I'll show it to you. So this is my Uttavist hiking jacket sweater. So it's got a hood, it's got a zipper, it's got zipper pockets. I learned quite a few skills in making this sweater. It is made with Istex Plotto Lopi held double. Now, Helene had a couple of options that you could knit with, but I thought I'd wanted to do it with, at least buy enough Plotto Lopi in Iceland, so that when I came home, if I didn't want to knit this sweater, Pláttulopi is very versatile and I could use it for other patterns as well. But I stuck with this one. So these were the main colors. Now, Pláttulopi comes in these plates. And when you knit double, what you do is you pull one from the outside and one from the center. I knit this some number of months ago. And as I showed you previously, it's really quite delicate. There we go. So you pull one from the center, one from the outside of the plate, and you hold it together. And it becomes quite strong. Now, if you pull from here, it's going to pull apart. But as long as you are pulling within the staple, that is some strong wool. And let me tell you, this is one warm sweater. So it's knit from the bottom up, then you separate for the sleeves, continue for the yoke and into the hood, and then you knit the sleeves second, or last. I made a few modifications. In her pattern, she has thumb loops on the cuffs, like some hiking and athletic wear has. I knew that I didn't want that, so I just had regular cuffs. And then on Ravelry, a number of people noted that where Helene had put the pockets wasn't actually all that great a spot. So I moved the pockets lower and down to the side. Now this is a steeked sweater. So that means that you knit in the round, and then when you're ready to put in the zipper, you cut it up. Now, I had done steeks before, and so I wasn't scared to do it. I know that a number of people find steeks a bit intimidating, but once you've done one steek, it's no longer a big deal. And because Icelandic wool is so sticky, I wasn't worried about it coming apart. Also, I will say I did reinforce the steek before I cut with a sewing machine, so that helps. The borders of the zipper are crocheted, and I have to say I don't really like crocheting with Pláttulopi. I think it looks a bit messy. I don't think I would do that again. And the zippers for the pockets are crocheted steeked. So what you do is you crochet the borders on either side of a stitch, and then you end up cutting it up. And then for the pocket, rather than making a knitted pocket, you sew in a mesh. I actually had a laundry bag, which I cut up. So another thing I learned from making this sweater is that you shouldn't measure for the zipper until you've fully blocked the sweater and you've already cut and crocheted the steek edge. So I was really gung-ho to get this sweater complete, and I measured for the zipper after I had finished blocking it, but I hadn't yet cut the steek, and so the zipper is too short, and there's some funny business here at the bottom where the zipper doesn't go all the way to the end. I'm still going to wear the sweater a lot because, first of all, it's really warm, and I think it is going to serve its purpose for being a hiking sweater very well. Here's the thing I found with this particular Pláttulopi. While I was knitting this sweater, I had the absolute worst eyelid eczema. I mean, my eyes became so inflamed and itchy and red. And as soon as I stopped knitting this sweater and I was done with it, my eyes healed up quite well. The other thing I'll note is that when I put it into soak for blocking, the eau de barnyard that emanated from my wash tub where it was soaking was phenomenally strong. It really stank to high heaven, not of wool, but of, well, eau de barnyard. And I am convinced that this plateau Lopi that I got, when it is processed, is not scoured or cleaned that strongly. There is something in this wool that makes my eyes itch. And as you can tell, I have quite a lot of it left. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I might use the red and the white, which I think has been bleached and maybe has been more processed because it's more fully dyed. I might use that to felt, some bags or some, because I enjoyed knitting with it. It's just that the eyelid eczema was something else. I am curious, any of you who have knit with this stuff, have you had similar allergic reactions or other issues with, I searched online and I couldn't find anything, but I am pretty certain that it's that wool. So that's my Utivist sweater. The next woolly hotspot I'll tell you about is the Thingborg Wool Workshop. The Thingborg Wool Workshop in Selfoss is an amazing celebration of Icelandic wool and knitting. There they have for sale their own brand of Lopi and Icelandic yarn. The yarn is actually processed and milled by Istex, but the people who run the Thingborg Wool Workshop go to a specific geography in northwest Iceland where they select fleeces from flocks that have been raised specifically for their quality of their wool. And the result is a finer Lopi. I was thrilled to discover this place because not only did they have really nice Lopi yarn for sale, but they also had beautiful hand-dyed colors that I had not seen anyplace else. They also have some wonderful Lopa Pesas for sale with patterns and colors and creativity that are like no other Lopa Pesas that I saw in my trip. So if you get to Selfoss and you want to buy a Lopa Pesa, I highly recommend going to the Thingborg Wool Workshop. I was on the hunt for wool with which to knit Jen Steingass's Altheda sweater. And here's mine. And I am thrilled with how it turned out. It is knit with a single strand of the Thingborg Plateau Lopi. I can't get that right. And I only have a very little bit of it left. This is natural color, and it is a little bit softer than the Istex Plateau Lopi. So that's the main color. The pink that is the pattern color is this wonderful hand-dyed Lopi. And it's really, I was really thrilled. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yep, getting that one. And I think it gives just this wonderful shimmery quality to the pattern that looks quite different than if it was a single tone of pink. And it knit up really fast. And it is quite warm. I hope I'm not crackling the microphone too much with my woolen yarn, and I apologize if that's the case. So I also should mention that while knitting this sweater, I had minimal eyelid eczema. Had a little bit, but it wasn't nearly as bad as with the Istex Plaatu Lopi. Also, when I put it in the tub to soak for blocking, the eau de barnyard smell was not nearly as strong. It was still there a little bit, but it wasn't like with the Utivist. Wow. Finally, if you're in Selfoss, you must make the 10-minute drive outside of town to the Spunny woolen mill, where a shepherdess has got a wool mill in the sort of the lower level of one of the buildings on the farm, where she processes and spins the wool of her own sheep and that of her neighbors. Above the mill is a yarn shop where she has some Lopa Pesas for sale, but she also has a beautiful collection of yarn that she herself has designed, processed, spun, and dyed. I got a bunch of wool from her because I was just delighted with the experience. First, I got some sock yarn, and I made some hardy winter socks made from Icelandic wool. And I love the color. This fiery orangey red is just so beautiful. And these socks are really warm. Now, I kind of was like a kid in a candy store, and I bought a whole bunch of skeins of her Headband, which is Spunny's Aran weight yarn. It's similar to, I guess, Let Lopi. And you know, this is sort of the natural color, because Icelandic sheep have many different colors, and you can still feel the lanolin in the wool. And by the way, when I was knitting these socks, no eyelid eczema, no eau de barnyard smell. So I am thinking that this wool is really nicely cleaned and processed. I love this color. Just the slight tonal variegation in the blue. I bought this yarn without a plan. Oops. So I don't know what I'm going to make with it. And unfortunately, I don't have enough for a sweater, but I think I can be creative. You know, and well, if you have any ideas, please do let me know in the comments. But here's what I'm thinking. I think this yarn might be similar to some of the higher quality yarn that comes out of the Faroe Islands or Norway, and I might be able to mix that in for a beautiful sweater. So I'm going to think about on that. But all of these colors just go together so pretty. Now, finally, I'll say that Icelandic wool is truly, really warm. In fact, in preparation for my Icelandic trip, I, of course, was very happily knitting a couple hats and some fingerless mittens and all sorts of things. But when I got there, I quickly found out that they were no match for the Icelandic wind and pelting rain. And when I wore this little Fair Isle hat I made, it was like I wasn't wearing a hat. The wind just went right through it. I ended up going into a gas station convenience store, which is actually a lot better than it sounds to us in the US. In Iceland, where the towns are really far apart, these convenience stores are really, really good, and they have lots of things in there that you wouldn't expect. But I did buy this icewear hat, which was much warmer than anything I had brought myself to wear. Now, it is also lined with fleece, which of course increased its warmth, but also made it suitable to put on my head and wear next to my skin. Because let's be honest here. Knitters often describe Icelandic wool as rustic, strong, woolly wool. But those terms are really just euphemisms for scratchy. Oh, Icelandic wool is scratchy. And well, at least that has been my experience. I have seen some people say that, oh, they don't have a problem with Lopi, it doesn't bother them at all, and so on and so forth. But you are not going to mistake Lopi for merino. No, no. And you're not going to mistake it even for Shetland wool. It is somewhat scratchy, and you cannot, at least I cannot wear Lopi next to my skin. For those of you who have knit with Icelandic wool, what's your experience been? Tell me, I'd like to know. Did you find it scratchy? Did you enjoy working with it? Did you have an allergic reaction? Maybe my experience is just one experience. I mean, I will knit with Icelandic wool again, but I will know what to watch out for. And now here's some wonderful scenery from our trip around the ring road in Iceland. We started off our journey in Reykjavik. After we picked up our camper van, we went to go see the volcano that had just stopped erupting 2 days before we got there. The lava was still smoking. Iceland has the most amazing rainbows.
So this is Lopa Pesa in Iceland, and those falls are not actually coming from a river, they're coming from the volcanic rock. These falls are really cool. And yes, it is snowing because we're in Iceland.
My husband was like a kid in the candy store with the amazing landscapes to photograph. We saw the northern lights and the red lights of Akureyri. This is the Uttavist waterfall. Our whale watching trip from Akureyri was incredible. Of course, we had to go to Utivist, home of the Eurovision Song Contest stars. As we made our way around Iceland, the landscapes continued to amaze and delight. With icebergs and glaciers, with moss-covered canyons and winding waterfalls. and finally the rock formations and black sand beaches of the southern coast. And now it's time for some show and tell. Of course, we've already had some because I went through my Icelandic knits in some detail, but these are the things that I have been working on most recently. I finished the headband that I made for my mom out of twisted seed stitch. In fact, I might try it on. I think it looks quite nice. What do you think? So that's that. I'll be giving it to her later this week. I'll of course be weaving in my ends first. And of course, I am in the very final home stretch of my Kurdock cardigan. This is the pattern by Carol Feller. I've been showing in almost all my episodes so far. Now, actually, I finished this about a week ago, and it hasn't been easy because now it is not finished, and I'll explain. So, first, I wanted to block it before I put the buttons on. And I did quite a hard block, which I'll show here. And when I tried it on as I was knitting it, I was a little bit concerned that it was going to be tight around the hips at the bottom. Now there's the way it's knit, it's a bit A-line, so there's increases as you go down from the armpit down to the waist. But I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of clearance. Well, I ended up giving myself way too much clearance, and I overblocked it. So then I had to think, and I blocked it again. So I put it again in warm soapy water to soak. And this time, instead of putting it on blocking mats and pinning it out, I put it on just a mesh sweater drying rack. And I kind of tucked things in, and now it actually tightened right back up, and it fits beautifully exactly how I wanted. And I do not have a sweater that is too big, at least around the hips and the waist. I did have a sweater that the sleeves were just a couple inches too long. And at first I was thinking, oh, I'll just curl up the sleeves, it'll be fine, I don't need to do anything. And even though I guess I had just miscalculated wrong on how long the sleeves should be, and I didn't want to make them too short because I've done that before. So what I did to make sure that the sleeve was actually the right length is that I unpicked the cast off edge of the sleeve, ripped back a couple inches, and then just reknit the cuff. So I have done that on this side, and I'm almost done with the cuff on this side. So the sleeves are almost done, and then I will have a finished Kurdock cardigan. So about 3 days ago, I was like, I finished my sweater. And then I tried it on, and I had a good think, and I looked at myself in the mirror and said, Melanie, you made the sleeves too long and you're not going to like it. Do something about it. So it's not yet a finished object. However, I did sew on the buttons. They are slightly too big and heavy, but I don't care because I really love them, and I think they go really beautifully with the wool. I got them from a seller on Etsy, and I'll put the link in the show notes because she has beautiful buttons for sweaters. They're glazed ceramic, and here, I'll close one up for you. I just think that they do a really good job of bringing out the golden flecks in the wool. So I am 100% sure that on my next episode, I'll be able to display for you a finished Kurdock cardigan. Almost there. So the other things I have going on are my sweater spin for Drea Renee Knits, or Andrea Mowry's. DRK spins the Weekender. Spin it to knit it along. Man, that's a mouthful. Anywho, I have here for you bobbin 10. The spinning is going well. Bobbin 13 is on the wheel now, and I only have one more. And then I will ply it all up and then be in a position to knit. Another thing I'm working on is my first knit made from hand spun. In my second episode, I believe, second or third, I showed some Targhee hand spun I made with Sweet Georgia's Spring Fling colorway. And I spun it to sort of a heavier fingering sport weight. And I am making the Happy Hipster pattern from Espace Tricot. So take a look. I love the way that the yarn came out self-striping. And only I know where there's little inconsistencies and things. It's really knitting up quite beautifully. So that's what I have got going on. Of course, now that I'll have a finished object coming off my needles, I have to think about what I'm going to make next. Well, I recently had a birthday, and lucky me, got the Chiagu shorties that everybody has been talking about on the interwebs. I have the Chiagu interchangeable circular, the big circular needle set, and I love. These are the itty bitty needles. They go from size 0 all the way up to size 3, and the cords come in various lengths, and they're supposed to be really good for knitting sleeves. In fact, a number of you recommended them to me for knitting the sleeves of my cardigan. But they can also be used to knit socks. So I want to test these guys out. So I might be putting a pair of socks on my needles because I have a whole bunch of fingering yarn in my stash that is waiting to be made with socks. Curious, if you have the shorty Chiagu needles, have you made socks with them, or do you mainly use them to make sleeves? What's your experience been? I'd like to know. Any tips and tricks I should be aware of when I first start working with them? I'm sure others would like to know too. So, we've come to the end of this episode of Yarn Journeys dedicated to Iceland. I hope you enjoyed reminiscing with me about my trip and revisiting my knits and learning about Icelandic wool. If you ever have the opportunity to go to Iceland, do not hesitate. get on that plane and go. It is a magical place. Do bring the proper outerwear and also bring an extra suitcase for that yarn that you might buy. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please do hit the like button below. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss the next episode of Yarn Journeys, please do hit the subscribe button. Who knows where I'll be going next? Well, actually I do. And you should know that in the fall, I have another international trip planned where I plan to bring you back all sorts of yarny goodness, but I am not telling yet where I am going. So thanks so much for watching Yarn Journeys, where it's you to you around the world. Till next time.